Hi there. We are going to keep going with the Moses story, and now he's going to help the Hebrew people leave Egypt. They've been slaves there, and this is a story of how God helped them to escape. The Hebrew people all cheered when Moses and Aaron spoke to them. They hated being slaves. They wanted to be free. So the brothers went to the palace to talk to the Pharaoh. God wants you to let our people go, they said. The Pharaoh was very angry. I will not let your people go. They belong to me. Tell your people to get back to work. The Pharaoh was so angry. He made things even harder for the Hebrew slaves. They had to make bricks for the Pharaoh's big buildings. They made the bricks out of clay and straw. Now the Pharaoh told them, you have to get your own straw. Go out into the fields to find it. But you have to make just as many bricks as before. The Pharaoh told his bosses to beat the people if they didn't make enough bricks. Then the Hebrew people were angry at Moses and Aaron. You asked the Pharaoh to let us go. What happens? We have to work harder. You make things worse. Why don't you just go away and mind your own business? Moses was upset. Is this why you sent me here? He said to God. Now the Pharaoh makes people work harder. You made things worse. Moses, God said, I made a promise to Abraham and Sarah, and to all their children's children. I made a promise that you will be a great nation. Go and tell that to my people. So Moses talked to the Hebrew people. Remember God's promise, he said. Please trust God. It's very important. Some of the people believed Moses, others didn't. God helped Moses and Aaron try to make the Pharaoh let the people go. God turned the river into blood. Zillions of frogs and bugs and flies came. The cows and sheep got sick, and there were sores on the people. There was hail and grasshoppers. One time it turned dark in the middle of the day. These things all happened to the Egyptians, not to the Hebrew people. But Pharaoh would not let the Hebrew people go. Then God said to Moses and Aaron, I will do one more thing to the Pharaoh and to the Egyptians. Then they will let my people go. So God told Moses exactly what was going to happen. Moses had to explain it to the Hebrew people. Listen carefully, Moses said. I want you all to get ready. We are going to leave Egypt. But tonight I want you to have a very special meal. Kill a small goat or sheep and roast it. Take some of the blood from the goat or sheep. Smear it on your front door. That way God will know which houses are Hebrew and which are Egyptian. That night, the Hebrew people ate the roasted sheep. They smeared the blood on their front doors. Many of the people said prayers to God. God made a sickness come into the homes of all the Egyptians. The oldest child in every house died. Even the Pharaoh's oldest child died. But none of the Hebrew children died. And the people said, the sickness passed over our homes because we had put the blood on our doors. That night, all the Egyptians, especially the Pharaoh, wanted the Hebrew slaves to leave. Get out, they yelled. Get out quickly. Take anything you want. Just go. The Hebrew people left quickly. It was like a whole city full of people all walking out together. Many of them had started making bread. They had to leave so quickly they didn't have time to let the bread get soft. They picked up everything and left. Miriam was walking with her two brothers, Moses and Aaron. We will never forget this time, she said to them. My people will always remember how God was with us. We will never forget God's promise. We will never forget, said Moses. And the Hebrew people still remember this time every year. They remember what God did for them many, many years ago. They celebrate with a special meal. They tell the story of how the Hebrew people were freed from being slaves. They eat food like hard bread that reminds them of what happened. They call the celebration Passover. because they remember how the terrible sickness passed over their homes and their children. That's the end of our story for today. We've been talking about creation a little bit in our worship services, starting last week and this week. Last week we talked about fire because Moses saw the fire in the burning bush. This week we're talking about death. And death does not seem like a part of creation. When we think of creation, at least I usually think about things coming to life, things growing. I think of trees with green leaves and water running in rivers and oceans and things like that. But death is part of creation. If we think about like trees or plants, at this time of year, we're starting to see some of the fruit being picked because it's ripe and ready to be picked. The fruit of the plant is where the seed is. And so if we don't pick the fruit falls on the ground, and the seed then is in the ground or on the ground and is able to grow then in the spring. So it's like that fruit falls to the ground and dies, but there's a seed in it that will grow a new plant next year. So death is part of creation because it's part of the cycle of life. When plants die, when anything dies, whether it's an animal or a plant, it decomposes. You know, we talk about compost. Well, things sort of rot and break, the plant and tissues break down, and they just kind of turn back into like dirt. And that special compost is full of all kinds of good vitamins and nutrients for the plants that are going to grow next. So death is an important part. Even though when people and animals and things die, we're often sad because we're going to miss them being with us, but it's an important part of the cycle of life and the cycle of how new things begin. So with the Egyptians and the Hebrew people, this death of the Egyptians is the thing that finally hurts the Egyptians enough that they're willing to let the Hebrew people go and not to hold them as slaves anymore. And that's pretty extreme. That's hard. If they would have let the Hebrew people go when Moses and Aaron asked, then none of this would have had to happen. But they were very hard-hearted and wanted to keep the slaves because it helped them make more buildings, and it was a way for them to have cheap labor. So it helped them make money, but it didn't help the Hebrew people at all. And so God wanted the Hebrew people to be free and to be safe and healthy. So God used extreme ways of getting the Egyptians to let go and let them go. So it's kind of a tough story. There's good parts and there's not so good parts, but we have to remember that even though this story uses death as a way to free the people, there was another way if they had let them go before this. But death is also a natural part of life. It's part of the life cycle. And so it's also the way that new things begin. So for the Hebrew people, this is a new beginning. It's a new beginning in their freedom and their life outside of slavery. So death allows for a new way to come forward. I hope that makes some kind of sense for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing if you can draw me a picture of maybe the people making their way to freedom, or maybe the special meal that they have the night before this happens. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.